Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of KPMG West Africa's Doing the Deal podcast, where you get to hear practical insights from deal making from across West Africa about the experience and recommendations of the deal making process. I'm Ijeoma Emezie-Ezigbo, a partner, and I'll be your host today. With me in the recording studio is an esteemed guest, Mrs. Abiola Ojo-Osagie, a senior partner at Afric Invest Capital Partners and the managing director covering the West African English-speaking countries. Welcome, Abiola. Great to have you in the studio.
Thanks, Ijeoma.
So I would appreciate if you can start with an introduction of yourself, your experience at Afric Invest, the structure of the Afric Invest Fund, and what you do generally with respect to sourcing deals and investing in the region.
Afric Invest itself, it's a platform. It's an investment, a pan-African investment platform. This is how we like to describe ourselves because what we do essentially, and we were established in 1994, so almost 30 years. So we've kind of been around for a very long time. We provide capital to robust companies, okay, that have business models that actually extend beyond the shores of their immediate region, so beyond the national borders of the entities that we're looking at. Over the years, Afric Invest today, we have close to 2 billion funds under management. We've invested in over 200 companies in 35 African countries. So we pride ourselves as knowing Africa very well, essentially investing in the different cycles of business, essentially from small to mid-cap and all of that. We have strategies for these different types of companies. And I could just maybe say, just to summarize, because with 2 billion funds under management, we have different generations of funds. Now, when you think of Afric Invest, think of 3 things. Think of an active investor. We're very active on the continent. Think of us as being Pan-African, and think of us as being very involved in terms of trying to see how we can improve the lives of Africans through inclusive and sustainable development.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Abiola, for that very detailed summary, and quite interesting to learn of the things you're doing across the region. The objective for our conversation really is to make sure that we bring in practical insights, experience sharing to the table so that other investors who are considering investing in the region can learn from some of those experiences of yours from doing the deals. So I'll speak to the deal that we recently supported you on, the short Justrite deal, and I'll ask specific questions around that particular deal. Based on what you have said with respect to your strategy and what the funds are trying to achieve in Africa, what would you consider to be the key attractions to Justrite?
To be honest with you, Justrite is for us a family name. We have known the sponsors, and this goes to the heart of what we do. So I didn't quite finish with Afric Invest because I didn't want to take all the time. But the truth is that we are located in over 10 offices in 3 continents, and that is very strategic because for us, it's important that we're local in our markets. And the reason for that is so that we can identify the likes of Justrite. And even if they're not at the level that we think that we should be investing, we stay with them and watch them grow. And this is the story of Justrite. And so we were with them on their journey, and we were constantly checking in with them, trying to understand their evolution. At some point, when we realized that they needed, and we saw the vision, they needed just to be able to have a flagship store in Ikorodu. And we supported them, not with the equity, on the equity side of things. We were able to find, as part of our diversified stack that I mentioned earlier, one of our strategies was able to support them by providing them with debt to grow that, and that pivoted them. That just changed the story for Justrite. Just to fast track, when it was time for Justrite to then grow and be able to bring in an external investor, having identified and understood the benefits of that, we were naturally one of the ones that, they looked at others, and it's always nice to look at others and be able to say, I think I'm more comfortable with Afric Invest. The fact that we could identify with sponsors that had a very robust business model, and it was clear how they were going to execute. And so what they needed was a lot of support in doing that execution. We could identify with people that were ethical, strong management team, and experienced. The story of Justrite is not for today, but it's the way they started just shows that they know exactly what they're doing.
That's really interesting. And you've mentioned the ethics, the strong management team, the strong financial reporting process. So the last we just released our dream deal in Sub-Saharan Africa, thought leadership where we had a lot of
that one. Yes,
thank you very much. We've seen one of the reasons that investors gave or the participants gave with respect to challenges that they see during the investment process is really some sort of credibility around the information that they require for the due diligence. But we also see from the survey that I initially mentioned, the participants know that 40% of the deals that they have tried, attempted to do in the past 4 years in Africa didn't close. So what will be some of the attributes beyond alignment that you see with the sellers that facilitated you getting to a successful close?
There's what you call local content that comes into play when you're doing deals, the business of trust. It's such an essential component that you can't wade it away, and it's intangible. You understand? So I think that I told you about our long history with Justrite. Knowing that they could identify with a team that is before them and that understood the local nuances and is able to bring in international experience was important to them. They were very big on trying to understand what are other people doing in your other markets. What can we do better? You know, the process of making an investment can be long and tedious sometimes.
Sure.
There's a period of negotiation. How do you go about that? How do you manage that? How do you manage egos and all of that? And if you do not understand the sponsors before you, it can come to an end at that point. So having to manage emotions, manage all of that, and knowing that Nigerians also have their peculiarities was quite useful in finalizing this deal, because we had our ups and downs, I must tell you. We had our ups and downs. We had times when we would just be silent for, we would just be silent, and I'm saying, should I call him? Should I not? And you know, the sponsors are very interesting people, good personality, very amiable, but can be very difficult also. But yeah, so I think that helped a lot. And the fact that they could trust you, they could lean on you, listen to you, and they think that we are making sense.
What would you consider the top 2 challenges that you had in the course of doing this particular deal?
The top 2. So they were organized, they wanted it, they kept telling us, we're ready for you. We can finish DD in 2 weeks. You know, have you heard that before? We can finish DD in 2 weeks. Just tell us what you want. We'll be there. And we were like, are you sure? And obviously, you know, they've taken debt and equity deals are never the same. So,
sure.
But we also know that we've worked with them in the past and we could identify. But honestly, typically for, you know, not small, but family-owned businesses, and it was more of trying to get the information that we want. Not that it didn't exist in the format that we wanted them. I think that was a bit of a challenge initially. We surmounted that with a lot of meetings, a lot of explanations and training of the team. And by the way, they were very helpful. They really wanted to go all out to support. But after we crossed that, it was more negotiation. Negotiated the deal with these people, and by the way, there were not 2 people, there were 3 of them, you know, and one was more quiet. She would defer to the couples. It's a couple and their sister, and it was the chairman that was leading the dance. He's not an easy guy. So, you know, there were times when he would flip and you would think, is it being real? Is it just acting? You're not sure, but I think negotiating the deal, the legal documents, beyond the valuation, obviously that was, and then it came into the legal docs, it was really difficult. But in all of this, I think being able to manage ourselves and to be able to communicate and, you know, not focus on the delays, but focus on the end game. We had a few days of delay, but ultimately we completed that.
I would speak to you know, your investments in the region in general and how that ties also into Justrite. When you look at the macro environment in Nigeria, in Ghana, especially around the Anglophone West Africa, how would you assess the impact of these macroeconomic headwinds on your investments, and particularly on Justrite, even as you think in the long term about exiting?
Yeah, you've touched on a very, very sore point, and the truth is that Anglophone West Africa is my region as a senior partner, and the two big markets, Nigeria and Ghana, are going through their own issues. And you know, the truth is that in 35 African countries, we've seen it all. We've seen ups and downs in different markets. So having challenges is not the problem that we have. Because, to first of all, put things in context, you're right. The macroeconomic headwinds, all the combination of issues that have occurred in these two markets in particular, have definitely reduced external investments generally across board, whether it's for VC, for private equity, across board. But I don't think it's more about the fact that economies have these challenges. I think it's the extent of the volatility and the uncertainty and just the complexity of what's going on that is really amazing. And it's giving us a bit of concern. For exits, we obviously, as equity, that gives us a bit of time, and we hope that the cycle would go and we will be able to. Obviously, we had the COVID cycle as well. All our companies that had issues in COVID have all recovered. So there is always a recovery period.
Sure.
So, but we just hope that the time will be shorter and that these companies can start to attain their potential, because there's a lot that can be done.
So I was going to come to that question. Based on your experience in other markets and also even the West African markets, what would you say is the average exit period or the average holding period for these portfolios for you across your markets?
For me, I think the target is to be there for at least 4 to 5 years. That's it. If it's early investments and like they just right, maybe we can add another year, but on average, to answer your question, about 4 to 5 years is what we expect.
What would be the key lessons or takeaway from your experience on this deal that you would like to share with both the investing community and also the private companies that are seeking to attract capital?
I think the first thing for me is never take it for granted that people understand what you're doing. Educate, let them understand it well. If you want to come into a market, you have to be able to identify with that market. When we were looking at Justrite, when we did the commercial DD expert, vast. Some of the roles, in terms of qualification, they were like graduates, and it's not normal. And we said, well, in Nigeria, these roles, one, there's unemployment, but at the same time, they are not badly paid, and so they don't mind to. So there are some nuances that you need to understand, and being in the local market helps. I think that for me, because I'm Nigerian, and because I also understood the markets and Justrite and all of that. And that speaks to the way that we are structured in Afric Invest. We have offices in major hubs, essentially to be able to address this.
I would close with the last question. How did you approach the selection of your team of transaction advisors, and what value would you really say were critical that these advisors brought to the table across the different phases of diligence or across the different phases of transaction evaluation process?
This is a good question. Hitherto we were doing DDs ourselves. Hitherto we were like, when we were smaller, we started 30 years ago, and we thought it has its advantages, and we never stopped, by the way, because even when we appoint transaction advisors, we're always there, because we think that DD also helps you to understand the business. But we've gone the advisory route, and we have seen a lot of benefit. On this one, we did quite a few DDs actually. It was beyond, of course, the financial and tax, which you helped us with. Thank you very much. We also had the commercial. We had of course, you also helped us with the IT, remember?
Yes.
And then the legal. Legal, very important, just as important as financial and tax and IT, because if you don't have a proper legal document, you can, for us, legal documents are not things that we look at. We hope that we never look at them, but we also want to make sure that they are, what they are. But the basis of selection was first, knowledge of the market. We felt like, especially for the commercial and the financial, having the right advisors, I needed to bring that back to the initial question on learning point. Very critical, absolutely critical. We never stopped, we were there, but the advisors helped us a lot. And I think that it's an important point to put on the table.
Thank you very much, Abiola. Do you have any final words to say? It's been very engaging speaking with you. Just your final closing remarks.
Well, I thank you again for this opportunity. I think it's wonderful, and I hope that it would have the right audience and people would listen, essentially because I do not think that with the state of, development in Africa, that government is the only source that businesses will have in terms of growing the economy. I think that there is a part to play. from the private investor, from the private side of things. And if people need to understand how these things are done, then you need to see the value that private equity brings into businesses. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you one more time for coming.
Thank you very much, Ijeoma.